G'day, my name is Sean M.T. Shanahan, and on the 31st of May 2021 I will be a published author of The Symbicate, a roaring whimsical adventure. So this is a steampunk fantasy adventure story, and if you don't know what that means, don't worry, that's what this video is all about. I'm going to have a slight introduction, and I'm even going to narrate the first chapter for you, so you can get a little bit of a teaser before you buy it. Now, I know what you're thinking, what the hell is a steampunk fantasy adventure? Well, as a little bit of an intro, enter a land of bantering adventurers, impractical gadgets, outrageous abilities, and chilling mysteries. A place of mercenaries, bounty hunters, and assassins who face off against each other on competing quests as they dodge slimy monsters and do-gooder heroes. Fall in love with dashing characters as they struggle to hold their ground against the world's injustices and find family in the unlikeliest of places. This is the start of a steampunk fantasy adventure series that will reach into cosmic proportions. So yes, 31st of May you'll get to read the first installment of the Symbicate series. Now there will be links in the description of the video so you can go purchase your own copy. We have paperbacks and ebooks with audiobooks to come soon. I do often post flash fictions and serial fictions to my website, and on Instagram I like to do little teaser opening narrations to get people excited. So my book is going to be no exception. I will be reading the first chapter in its entirety for you. I'm also going to read the blurb so you know a little bit more about the official copy of what's on the back. So here we go. The Symbicate, a steampunk fantasy adventure. The Symbicate is the most feared criminal organisation in the land. And now it's dying. Rival crime rings, dashing heroes, and scorned freedom fighters close in alongside scores of the world's deadliest bounty hunters, assassins, and hitmen, all flocking to one city to compete for the payday of a lifetime. Three young adventurers find themselves embroiled in the deadly plot. A hired hero out for revenge, a reluctant assassin just trying to survive, and a do-gooder viscount on a quest to save his uncle. Our three hapless heroes are unaware of how intertwined their destinies will be, and strive to complete their quests, even if it means giving up everything they once believed in. This is a world where the moon is shattered and the land is inhabited by symbioids, sinewy life forms that can weave with gadgets or hosts to grant unique abilities. But treachery and mystery abound beneath the surface, and things are never as they seem. Enticing? Well, luckily for you, we're going to read the first chapter. I keep saying that, don't I? Chapter 1, Thomas Marrow. The moon was cast across the sky in crumbled ruin, trailing celestial wisps of pale green luminance as it arched over the lip of the ocean. The shattered celestial corpse dimmed as the sun rose over still waters, gorgeous and completely lost in the figure standing at the base of the cliff. He was tall with a broad chest, tanned olive skin and dark hair. He wore a red frock coat with bulky copper contraptions on his forearms, a cutlass strapped on the right hip, and a long knife on the left. He would have looked intimidating if he were not nervously fretting at the moment. Okay, deep breath. Thomas rested his head on the smooth cliff face, lulled into a false calm by the lapping waters. You've got this. After a few more deep breaths, Thomas opened his eyes and gazed upwards. That was a mistake. The sheer cliff loomed to challenge the celestial heavens. The surface grew craggy a dozen feet up, and the base smooth from a time when the moon could affect the tide so drastically. The rough surface was gilded by the kindling embers of the sun as it crawled higher over the horizon. It cast the shadowy recesses into acute, hellish darkness, looking like the gnashing of teeth of some deranged demon. This cliff is insane. As dizziness took him, his foot slipped off the rocky edge and plunged into the ocean. Cogrust! He shook his foot off in a useless attempt to rid himself of the chilling dampness. Okay, enough of this. Time to get to work. He ran his hand nervously through his short dark hair and craned his neck again. The shattered moon still fought a losing battle against daylight, shining with a green luminescence against the violet of a dying night. At least that looks pretty, he thought, raising his arms. He flexed the symbioid woven into the bronze contraption strapped to his forearms, triggering the latch. Grappling hooks launched from each arm, shooting into the air and embedding in the cragged, rocky surface. He flexed the symbioid again, and the spool mechanism retracted the tethers, pulling him up the cliff face. Deep breath, he said again, his stomach dropping as he ascended. Your equipment won't fail. Your symbioid won't fail. He reached the grapple point and his ascent stalled. He flexed the symbioid again and one of the hooks released from the wall. Hanging from one arm, Thomas swung back and accidentally glanced downwards. "Oh," he said, feeling nauseous. "Just don't think about it." Alternating his ascent between the different grapple hooks in his arms, he slowly made his way up the vertical surface. The moon debris orbited around the world and faded from view as the sun breached dawn and sailed into morning, lighting the ocean with red fire before it glistened like a sapphire. Just think of the mission. Thomas Marrow was a hired hero, belonging to a group of questionably skilled mercenaries employed by municipalities or the wealthy to take on necessary but dangerous tasks. And here he was, fretting, again. To him, it was just a job to pay the bills while working for the good guys, or the closest to good you could get in this line of work. And occasionally they did pro bono work for the little ones, which is the only reason Thomas had stayed on. Today was not one of those jobs. Recently, a crime ring in the region had taken to abducting the children of the rich and ransoming them off for an insane cube colour. They made a killing, but this time they screwed up. Their target was a high-end tailor, and they broke into his home while they were hosting the daughter of nobility. They took the wrong girl by mistake, and Hired Heroes was employed to get the young princess back. Or was she a duchess? Or a baroness? It didn't matter. Thomas had tracked them to this stronghold, ruins on the edge of a sparsely inhabited island off the coast of Wesden, and he was going to get her back. It was mid-morning by the time Thomas reached the top of the cliffs. He was panting, and sweat soaked his deep maroon frock coat, even as it billowed in the wind. With one last grapple, he was over the lip of the cliff, quickly slinking behind the crumbling wall of the ruins. He took a moment to catch his breath and reconnoitre the situation. The ruin was an old fortification facing out to sea, an imposing first line of defence against invaders in eon past. Now it was in shambles. It looked as though a meteor had hit it. Something far more devastating than a meteor, Thomas thought. Not one wall was fully intact, and the interior of the fortification was littered with a mess of boulders, collapsed walls, and precariously half-hanging rafters. There was a vague sense of rooms and battlements with somewhat intact stairs, and most of the roof had caved in with a large, greenish foreign stone protruding through it. On the far side there was a staircase, which was half obscured by a partition. The ruined space within was littered with shards of red and gold, a sign of wealth from the time before the cataclysm. The sun poured through the voided windows and crumbling holes, reflecting off the shattered stained glass amongst the old debris, and cast an eerie, disjointed red-gold glow against the garish moonrock meteoroid. Within the area there were several men playing cards, betting meagre-coloured cubes of white, violet and indigo, while bantering and laughing boisterously on occasion. Some blunderbusses lay across boulders nearby, but the majority of them had cutlasses or sabres. There must be a guard somewhere in the perimeter as well, Thomas thought, and someone with the Baroness. Duchess. "You'll eat what you're given and you'll like it, you prissy girl." A voice pierced the confines of the ruins and echoed off the many surfaces. Thomas winced, but the men laughed as loud sobbing followed. He homed in on the source of the voice. It came from the ruined staircase on the far side. Shadows were cast against the wall by firelight on the first landing, depicting the image of a man stalking away from a hunched-over figure. "Target acquired," Thomas whispered to himself. He slinked into the ruins proper, taking advantage of the rocks and craggy boulders for cover, while avoiding the shattered glass buried amongst the dust. The sounds of his passage were muffled by the echoing banter. Eventually he wound his way around the giant, invasive moonstone in the centre of the room and found himself beneath the landing, where he suspected that the Duchess, Baroness, where the hostage was being held. He aimed to grapple upwards and waited. Not long after, the men erupted into laughter again, and Thomas shot his grappling hook into the landing above. Satisfied that no one heard his actions, he spooled himself upwards. Several metres off the ground, he swung back and forth, ignored the rising bile in his throat, and caught the lip of the landing with his free hand, and pulled himself over slowly to find the captive sitting hunched against the wall. She was a young girl, perhaps in her mid-teens, with pale skin and red puffy eyes. Her pink floor-length gown was filthy, and her blonde braided hair was strewn about in a mess. An uneaten bowl of stew sat before her. Thomas's mouth began to salivate. That smells amazing. Why would she complain about that? Noble girls. Thomas crept silently up to her before she noticed him. She made a start, but he rushed in and forced his hand over her mouth while bringing his fingers to his lips. Don't fret, he said quietly. I'm a hired hero. Your dad got me to come find you and bring you home. Certain that she would not scream, he released her. Thank you, she sobbed. Shh, Thomas said, more to quiet her than to comfort her. Let's get you out of here. Before moving, Thomas had a thought. He scooped into the bowl of stew with the spoon and took a quick bite. This is delicious. He regarded the hostage. Noble girls. He moved her to the lip of the landing. Flexing his symbioid, he released the tether mechanism of his grapple and silently unspooled it. The symbioid ran along the tether like pale, sinewy tendons, contracting and moving like an extended limb. He wrapped the tether around her waist and pulled her tight. He quietly hooked his other grapple over the lip of the landing and lowered them both down to ground level. Getting the girl back to the lip of the cliff was easier than he had expected. The card players were still boisterous, which is ideal for sneaking. They quickly found themselves behind the weathered wall, just a few feet from the cliff's edge. Nope, the girl said. No, I can't go down that way. We have no choice. It's all open grassland on the other side of these ruins. They'd spot you in that dress a mile away. I can't do this, she said, a little more loudly than Thomas would have liked. I'm terrified of heights. Shh, Thomas said and moved in closer, putting reassuring hands on her shoulder, looking into her terrified eyes with his deep brown wells. I'm afraid of heights too. Terrified. But I have my grapples, and I'm going to give you this. He flapped open his maroon, calf-length coat, revealing his leather waistcoat with weaved-in bronze plates. He reached behind his back, pulled out a folded harness, and unfurled it. It was made from 2 tin plates with vents and corrugated tubes, and would fit over the shoulders via leather straps. The backplate covered most of the upper back and had 2 nozzles poking outwards and down. He put the harness over the baffled girl and began tightening straps over her shoulders and under her arms as he explained what it was. This is an aero brake, he said. There is a mechanical symbioid woven into the contraptions. Mechanical? As in dead? I don't want to weave with a symbioid, let alone a dead one. That's abhorrent, she said aghast. Thomas rolled his eyes. You won't have to weave with anything. It's woven solely into the contraption itself and doesn't require conscious control. It's purely mechanical, all automatic. Now, as you fall, you expect me to jump? Thomas sighed. No, this is just a precaution in case you fall while I'm lowering you down. My grapple hooks take effort, you know. Now, as you fall, the symbioid would siphon air through these vents and jettison it out the nozzles on the back. This will slow you down. Understand? He tightened the last of the straps. I think so. Good. Now don't worry, it's just a precaution, we won't have to use it, okay? She nodded timidly, and Thomas started unspooling his grapple tether to wrap around her when a voice shook him from his calm. The Duchess is missing! Oh, so you are a Duchess, Thomas said. He peeked over the wall to check on the guard's reaction when his blood froze. It was him. Golden cloak, scar across his right eye. He had aged, but it was him. It was like Thomas was a 13-year-old kid again, cowering in his father's workshop with his 11-year-old sister as battle raged outside. The memory echoed in every waking moment of his life, and now one of the men he had been hunting for 10 years was here before him. The smell of burning wood, seared flesh, the rattling echo of trumpeted blunderbusses firing, splintering the door, and his sister shaking herself to pieces, shuddering with every shot. It all came rushing back. He and Sibylla shrieked back when their father blinked and appeared in the room, covered in blood, panting, eyes wide with terror. I'm sorry, he said. I can't stop them. I'm sorry. The door burst inwards, filling the room with smoke as several men rushed in, knocking his father down and holding him in place. Then 2 men in golden cloaks waltzed in. So you really did embrace the tinkerer life, dear Barty, That is a shame. Someone of your caliber reducing themselves to this, one of them said, pulling a golden round device from his cloak. Why aren't you blinking away, I wonder? Is it the children hiding beneath that workbench, or are you simply too exhausted from that fruitless battle? How's your heart, old chum? Barty remained stoic, if beleaguered, while staring down the gold cloak under the grip of two henchmen. Too tired to talk to your old friend, Barty? Ringleader, you know nothing of friendship, Barty spat. The other gold cloak stepped in and smacked him across the face. Better do it now, he said, before he recovers enough to blink again. I don't think he'll be going anywhere with his offspring cowering nearby, Kane. But all right, I shan't delay. The ringleader said. He marched up to Barty and pressed the golden orb into his chest. He clicked a latch, and the orb sprung open. The embossed designs twisted with decorative gears as one of the hemispheres splayed open and dug into Barty's flesh. Barty screamed in agony as bright light shone from the innards of the orb, and the living symbiote was torn from Barty's flesh, siphoned from his body in thick tendrils and sucked into the orb, which clicked shut. I'd wager you never really knew what you had woven with, the ringleader said, gazing at the orb in wonder. Now? Kane asked. Now, the ringleader replied. Kane plunged his knife into Barty's chest. His body went into spasms and then went limp. Young Thomas screamed and rushed out from under the workbench and used his father's sword to slash at the murderer's face, tearing it down his eye. Kane screamed in fury and walloped Thomas across the face, knocking him out cold. Young Thomas woke hours later beneath the burnt-out remains of his father's workshop. His arms blistered and burnt, but somehow he survived. His sister Sibylla was nowhere to be found. He vowed that day that he would track down his sister and have revenge on the gold cloaks. He tinkered his own weapons from symbiote and bronze to make his grappling hooks, and prepared to hunt the men who killed his family ever since. He found no leads in the men until now, when the man who had plunged a knife into his father's heart stood over the ruins. His torn, scarred face glared down into the ancient wreckage, and Thomas was filled with long-lasting rage. Hero, the Duchess said, we must flee. Thomas took one look at her and sidekicked her off the cliff. Her scream would have alerted the men to their whereabouts, but he was already charging in with his cutlass drawn, bellowing a battle roar. Thomas cut down the first thug before he could react, then launched his grappling hook at the thug's companion before he could bring his blunderbuss around to fire. It hit him square in the chest, and he tumbled back into the ruins. With a whipping motion, Thomas retracted the grappling tether. He flexed the symbiote to curve the receding line and tripped two other thugs from their feet as he slashed out at a third assailant, killing him with a blow to the neck. Thomas flinched as the sentry from the outer wall clambered upon a boulder on the far side and peered through the sight of his blunderbuss. The blast trumpeted from the tuber-like nozzle of the gun, and the shot pinged off a boulder nowhere near Thomas. The shooter began the frantic process of reloading. Clumsy weapons, Thomas thought with a smile. He recovered from his flinch and finished the two tripped men before they could right themselves. Another thug rushed in from the side and shoulder-charged him, causing him to drop his cutlass, and he shuffled back to recreate distance. He launched a grapple at the new assailant and flexed the tether to wrap around his neck, tightening it like a leash. The man grabbed at the tether with both hands, fighting against the choking line. Thomas drew his knife and roared. He retracted the tether, ripping the ensnared man towards him as he rammed his knife into his chest. He released the corpse and snatched up his fallen cutlass, wiping his knife on his coat before sheathing it. The sentry with a blunderbuss appeared from between the boulders and fired point blank, catching Thomas off guard. A glancing hit pinged off the bronze plating woven into his leather waistcoat. Thomas glared at the bewildered man, who dropped his weapon and scrambled away through the boulders. Thomas did not pursue him. Instead, he looked for his real target, Kane. His gaze darted around the ruins, searching, seeking, hunting for his prey. He grappled up onto a rock, brandishing his sword, and bellowed, Kane, where are you? His question echoed off the walls into nothingness, and was replaced by a different echo, the echo of slow applause. Thomas scanned the boulder-strewn area for the source of the noise, and his gaze was drawn upwards. Cain was walking on the ceiling. His cloak hung awkwardly from his body, clapping slowly as he made his way over to Thomas. Symbioid woven boots. Cog rust. I have to hand it to you, Cain said heartily. Even if they were a useless bunch of thugs, it is no easy feat to kill and scatter half a dozen men. There will be one more dead before the day is done, but you won't have a chance to flee like that last man, Thomas snarled. Now, what have I done to you to deserve such hostile attention? My name is Thomas Marrow. Cain started, the sneer drained from his face. Thomas shot a grappling hook up to the ceiling and spooled upwards, hanging far above the jagged boulders and ruins below. He looked down, or, from his opponent's perspective, up into Cain's eyes. You killed my father and took my sister. You can't be that little brat who did this to my face, can you? Cain gestured to his scarred face as he drew his sword. I thought we left you to burn in that little hovel of a workshop. I survived, and I've trained all my life to do what my father couldn't, to defeat you, to find my sister, and then to kill you all. Thomas attacked, ferociously, savagely. He fought with the burning need for vengeance that had fueled him throughout all his training. He was the raging storm, but from the deftness with which his opponent parried his attacks, he may as well have been a gentle breeze. Cain's symbioid boots gave him traction on the ceiling, and he could duck and weave around Thomas, who was secured solely to one point by his grapple, swinging wildly. Cain could also use both hands, while Thomas could use only one. Thomas was unused to fighting a man who was upside down, yet his quarry seemed to have much experience fighting from this vantage point. After a furious but ineffective bout, Cain shifted back, preparing a riposte. Thomas glanced down at the ruins below. My grapples would be of much better use against his boots amongst the rocky terrain. As Cain lunged forward to strike, Thomas rapidly unspooled his grapple and launched his second one against a low-hanging rafter, swinging away from the attack and landing heavily against the far wall. Thomas took the impact with his feet, but it still knocked the wind out of him. He released his grapples and slid down the wall, landing clumsily on a mantelpiece. Thomas scanned the ceiling, desperately trying to find his prey. Footsteps approached from above, and Cain charged down the wall with a sinister grin. With a shout, Thomas leapt from the mantel just in time to dodge a ramming blow from above. He rolled over his shoulder on the rough, gravelly floor and came up running between a crevice formed by two boulders. He spun to face his foe as Cain leapt from the mantel to the floor. Cain leapt into the crevice, and Thomas braced to parry a high blow. But he leapt to the side, onto the wall of the crevice, and launched forward while running sideways, attacking Thomas in a bizarre, angular manner. Thomas slashed desperately at Cain's feet, but he flipped from the boulder, landed on the opposite side, and attacked Thomas in a mirrored fashion. In his desperate powering retreat, Thomas shuffled out of the crevice and tripped over a loose stone, tumbling onto his back. Cain prepared to leap onto him, but Thomas launched his grapple and dragged himself across the ground to safety. Thomas scrambled onto his feet, but did not retract his grapple. He launched his other grapple in a different direction and ducked and weaved through the rocky terrain. His tethers crisscrossed over one another on his roundabout path as Cain pursued and attacked relentlessly from odd angles. Thomas ducked around a corner and was met with a savage kick as Cain had headed him off. He was knocked back onto his ass against the large meteor that had pierced the ceiling a century ago. Cain said, panting, I've got to say, little Marrow, you put up more of a fight than your old man, regardless of how futile your fight is. It's a shame you trained so hard and for so long, just to fail now. He stepped forward, brandishing his blade to strike. When you fought my father, Thomas said, you didn't even close in until you'd worn him out. You only entered the fray when you knew he was too exhausted to blink. I still have just enough energy to flex my symbioid one last time. Cain hesitated as a sinewy tether wrapped around his feet. In panic, his gaze darted around the area. Layers of crisscrossed tethers zipped shut, tightening around him before he could react, trapping him, suspended from the ground like a fly in a web. Thomas laughed and shifted himself upwards, wiping blood from his nose. Release me, you whelp, Cain bellowed. Thomas smacked him across the face. I make the demands here, you son of a bitch. Where is my sister? Do you have any idea what kind of hell you're about to unleash on yourself? Thomas smacked him again. My sister! Cain shied back. We sold her. To who? Thomas's knuckles went white, gripping his sword. The Night Mother's crime ring. She uses little children for interference. Most don't survive more than a few years. Your sister, she must be dead by now. Thomas reached up and grabbed Cain's throat. Where can I find the Night Mother? I don't know. He coughed through the chokehold. My boss, the one who took your father's symbioid. Only he knows how to contact her. But I swear, your sister is dead. No child survives the Night Mother's tasks. Thomas's grip on Cain's throat tightened. Then vengeance is all I require. Who is your boss? Where can I find him? He's in Masonville. He runs the Symbicate. You have no idea what you're getting yourself into, boy. His name. He coughed. His name is... There was a gunshot. Cain's head snapped back, suspended dead in Thomas's grapples, as crimson painted the boulders behind him. Thomas spun around to look for the threat. He relaxed his hold on Cain and unspooled his grapples, ready to move and fight. But he dropped his guard when he saw a man in a maroon frock coat perched on a boulder by one of the blown-out glass windows. The newcomer stood, saluting Thomas, a modified blunderbuss smoking in his arms, its trumpeted muzzle fitted with a funnel device that narrowed the barrel at the end. Sniped, you jammed gear. He was about to tell me what I needed to know, Thomas bellowed. Cool your boiler hooks, Snipes yelled, jumping down. He made his way through the boulders, which were being filtered through by a team of other hired heroes as they reached the enraged Thomas. Boss is gonna want to have words with you. You threw the Duchess off a cliff. Snipes started disassembling his gun. She had an arrow break, Thomas protested. She fell into the water, Hooks. Our client will not be pleased. Screw the client. This man was going to tell me who was responsible for having my father killed. The other hired heroes exchanged glances. Snipes removed his shooting goggles, letting his short red hair free from his cap, and eyed Thomas coolly. That still wasn't the job, Hooks. You're too narrow-minded, Snipes. You'd complete the mission at the expense of all else, even after last time. Snipes scowled. Even so, I reckon Boss is still gonna want to have words with you. Come on, Hooks. Don't make me force you. Thomas sighed in irritation. Fine, and when we talk, I'm going to request a little holiday. Where to, Hooks? Another of the hired heroes asked. Masonville. So guys, that was the Chapter 1 narration of the Symbicate to entice you to purchasing it. If you would like to, you can get the paperback in the ebook through a link in the description below. It's a universal book link. It will take you through to places like Amazon, Apple, Booktopia, all that kind of stuff, plus a few others. If you want to check out my website, or you can check out some other stories, I also have a link there as well. And I've also got a free ebook, Solar Rain. You can see the cover for it up there, right next to the Syndicate's cover. That's a free little ebook in exchange for signing up to my mailing list, and you will get updates on sequels and other books and the like. But thank you so much for your time. I've hoped you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoy my book as well. One humble request before I sign off. If you guys check out my book, and if you do like it, would you please consider leaving a review? Reviews are one of the best ways that you can support budding authors that you enjoy, as well as talking to your friends about it. That really helps. Otherwise, I am so glad that you are here, and I hope you enjoy this journey. Take care. You can't be that little brat who did this to my face, can you? Oh, that works out.